She called me a beggar for asking $100. The next day, I withdrew $3.5 billion, and she dropped to her knees in front of the entire bank. Hey there, welcome back. Wherever you are, cooking, commuting, lying on your bed, I hope you're ready for a story that might stay with you longer than you expect. Before we dive in, I just want to say something from the heart. Over the past few weeks, I've read your comments, some encouraging, some critical, and I want you to know, I hear you. Whether it's praise or feedback, it's helping me grow. This space isn't just mine, it's ours. So thank you for being part of it. Now, today's story is a powerful one. It's about a woman who wasn't just underestimated. She was erased, overlooked by her family, mocked by her sister, until one day, she decided to stop asking for a seat at their table and built her own. Maybe you've felt like that, invisible, dismissed, or maybe you've watched someone else rise when no one expected them to. So stay with me until the end, because how she handles it might just surprise you. And if this kind of storytelling speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe. It's the fuel that keeps this channel alive. Now let's begin.
You'd be surprised how loud a whisper can be when it echoes off marble walls. Last Friday, I walked into Veritas Bank, downtown Chicago, not because I had business there, at least not the kind they knew, but because Mrs. Eldridge, my elderly neighbor, had left a note outside my apartment door. She needed $100 to get her heating turned back on. The city had dipped into a frost that felt personal, and I couldn't bear the thought of her shivering through another night. I had more than enough. $100 wouldn't even show up as a blip. But that wasn't the point. I wore a charcoal gray coat I'd mended myself last winter, thrifted boots, scuffed but sturdy. My scarf, a muted plum, was the only item with a memory stitched into it. I used to wear it like armor, back when silence was my only rebellion. The bank lobby was what you'd expect. Polished glass, curated jazz humming beneath the hum of wealth, the scent of citrus wood, and control. I stood in line behind a woman in a camel trench coat, tapping her gold pen against her iPhone. She glanced back at me once, long enough to scan and dismiss. I'd grown used to that look. And then came her voice. Well, well, if it isn't Aria Dawson, she crooned, loud enough to catch the attention of a nearby teller. I turned slowly. Madeline, my sister, dressed in winter white like she invented December, heels clicking like gavel strikes across the marble floor. She was regional manager now. Of course she was. Still, I managed a half smile. Hi, Maddie. She didn't return it. We've, updated our account tiers, she said with a smirk. We don't typically serve walk-ins anymore, especially not charity cases. Laughter flickered behind her eyes, not in her mouth. A man in a navy pea coat paused scrolling. An older woman in pearls glanced up. I felt the air shift, as if I'd spilled something invisible. I said nothing, just nodded. That's the thing about silence. When wielded right, it cuts sharper than insult. I stepped out of the line and walked past her, past the rows of wealth-addressed clients, past the scent of old money and false security. Outside, the wind kissed my cheek with a chill that felt like freedom. She had no idea what I really came to withdraw, and tomorrow I'd show her. I didn't cry. Not when I reached the apartment, not even when I hung up my scarf and caught a glimpse of myself in the entry mirror. Face unreadable, mouth tight, eyes like closed doors. Instead, I made tea I wouldn't drink, lit a candle I didn't need, and sat on the floor with my back against the couch like I used to when the world felt too sharp. Then, I reached beneath the cushion and pulled out the laptop. A scratched-up, matte black machine that looked like nothing, felt like everything. I opened it. The screen blinked twice before settling into a dark interface with one line of blinking text. Enter face braze. My fingers didn't hesitate. Foxglove.never forgets. A soft chime. Then 3 more levels of encryption. Fingerprint, rotating code, satellite handshake. I'd designed it that way, with Reed Alvarez, the only person who ever believed I wasn't just the quiet one. He'd once said, if the world's gonna burn, at least make sure your firewall can dance in the fire. That was our thing. Paranoia dressed like poetry. The system booted. Aegis Core 7, my ghost project, my invisible empire, registered in 5 countries, structured through 3 shelfers, fronted by 2 decoy founders, none of whom were me. I was just the architect, the shadow behind the code. And as of last quarter, Veritas Bank, the one where Madeline played Queen, had been accepted as a silent liquidity partner. She signed the onboarding contract herself. I'd watched her signature crawl across the screen like a spider unaware of its web. Madeline Dawson, Regional VP, Shell Entity, Aegis Core 7 Holdings, Tier 1 Access. I should have felt smug. I didn't. I felt still. Not peace, not anger, just gravity. Like something in me had shifted tectonically, and now I was standing on new ground that always had been mine. I typed into the command panel. Show active positions. Partner institution, Veritas Bank. Lines of data populated. Fast, brutal, clinical. 3.5 billion in liquid equity, spread across investment vaults, dynamic yield blocks, ESG-friendly hedge positions. All under my name, or rather the name the world didn't know me by, Kestrel Vale. A name I once whispered to myself at 14 when I first hacked the local school server to fix my GPA after Madeline accidentally deleted my project. She never found out. She never noticed much unless it wore diamonds or called her ma'am. I took a breath and stared at the bottom of the screen. Initiate primary withdrawal. YN. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My heart beat, slow and steady, like a warning drum in the fog. Did I really need to do this? Did I need to prove anything? No. But I needed her to see. Not just the numbers, not just the pullback of capital. I needed her to recognize the cost of underestimating someone who never needed to raise her voice to take the room. I pressed Y. The screen blinked red for a split second. Command accepted. Nothing exploded. No alarms rang, but somewhere, in an office with eucalyptus-scented floors and art she never understood, Madeline's world just developed a crack. And cracks always spread. I arrived precisely at 9 a.m., not a minute early, not a second late. I parked my car across from Veritas Bank's flagship branch and just sat there for a moment, watching the morning sun hit its glass facade. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel powerful either, just aligned, like my bones and my past were finally standing on the same side. I adjusted the lapels of my navy wool coat and stepped out. I didn't bother with heels. I wore dark leather flats, quiet, firm, and made for walking through storms. Inside, the scent was the same. Polished wood and lemon oil, trying too hard to smell like trust. The marble floor reflected everything but truth. And behind the front desk, a new face. "Good morning, welcome to Veritas Bank," the receptionist chirped, too young to be tired yet. "I have an appointment," I said, sliding a sleek black folio across the counter, "under Aegis Core Holdings." She began typing, but the moment she entered the name, her screen blinked red. Not an error, a flag. I need to get the manager," she stammered. I nodded once. "You do that." Behind me, the lobby murmured with client chatter. In the corner, someone swiped through stocks on a tablet. The world still spun. But then, heels. I recognized them before I saw her. Madeline's signature staccato rhythm, each click a weapon, each step rehearsed. "Are you serious?" she hissed, marching toward me like a squall in designer silk. "This is not a place for you to perform whatever petty act this is." She reached for the folio. But I didn't flinch. The receptionist looked unsure, eyes darting between us. Madeline snatched the folio open, smirking. But the smirk only lasted 2 pages. Then she went still. Her eyes tracked the third document, lips parted slightly, not enough to speak, just enough to realize she couldn't. Her hand trembled, just a flicker, like a loose wire in a perfect chandelier. "I don't understand." "No, you don't," I said quietly. Just then, Mr. Calloway, the branch's senior director, emerged from the private corridor. Tall, silver-haired, suit so perfectly pressed it probably came with a personal assistant. He scanned the folio, then turned to the receptionist. "Close the lobby, lock the front doors." The girl blinked. "Sir? You heard me." He turned to Madeline. "You should come with me." "I'm the regional manager," she said, pitched too high. "What is this about?" He didn't answer her, just looked at me. "This way, Ms. Vale." That name again. Vale. Not Dawson. We moved down the hall into a private executive suite, the kind with noise-canceling glass and leather chairs that only knew how to accommodate power. Mr. Calloway typed into his system. His face didn't move, but his eyes did, darting, calculating. "Primary withdrawal request confirmed. $3.5 billion. He turned to Madeline. "You're listed as an officer in a partnered entity. Did you know your institution was hosting funds linked to an unregistered controlling interest?" Madeline's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I don't know what this is. This must be a mistake." "It's not," I said flatly. "You've been hosting my funds. I chose to stay anonymous. Until now." Her face drained. "But you're my sister." "No," I said, my voice low and surgical. "I was your shadow. Convenient to step over. Easy to forget. But you can't forget something that owns your floor." There was silence then, not just in the room, but in her bones. Then she stumbled, literally stumbled, back against the wall. Her knees hit the floor with a sound that didn't echo, but it cut through the air anyway. "Aria," she said, breath shaky, "don't do this. You don't know what this will do to me. My career, my son. I built this." I tilted my head slightly. "No, you decorated it. I built it." Behind me, the assistant entered and handed Calloway a printed log. He scanned it quickly. "Lobby is closed. Compliance team is en route. Full audit initiated. Request validated by top-level verification. No further approvals needed." Madeline's hands gripped the carpet like it could save her. "I'm your sister," she said again, voice cracking. "Are you? Because the girl you laughed at yesterday, she remembers every time you said I wasn't enough. Every time you treated me like charity in a hand-me-down coat." She began to cry. Real tears now. Not performative, not weaponized. But I didn't look away. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't deliver a speech. I simply turned to Calloway. "I'd like to continue this discussion in private, upstairs, somewhere secure." He nodded. "Executive lounge is ready?" The invitation came wrapped in politeness and panic. A text from Vanessa Hale, my cousin and occasional PR puppet for the Dawson name. "Family dinner this Friday. Just a few of us. Casual. Hope you can make it." It wasn't casual. Nothing ever was with them. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I waited. Watched the headlines shift in financial circles, the chatter buzz around compliance whispers, and the quiet disappearance of Madeline's name from the About Us page of Veritas Bank's regional leadership. By Thursday, a second message came, this time from Stephen, her husband. "Aria, we'd love to reconnect. No pressure, just let's talk." Talk. That's what they always said, when what they really meant was, we're losing control. I agreed to dinner. Not for closure, not even for confrontation. I wanted them to see who I'd become. Not in a press release, not as a rumor, but right across the table, in a seat they never thought I'd earn. The restaurant they chose was Il Marlo, a family favorite growing up. We used to come here for birthdays, graduation parties we faked enthusiasm for, and once, just once, when I won a science fair and no one expected me to. It hadn't changed. Same olive branches carved into the chairs, same rosemary and garlic scent hanging in the air like memory. The hostess led me to the back, a long table under a gold pendant light. I sat at the head, alone. For 7 minutes, I let the silence build like static in the air. Then heels, Chanel earrings, lipstick too red for sincerity. Vanessa. She slid into the seat across from me like we were brunching at the club. "Well, someone's glowing," she purred. "You've been busy, huh?" I didn't answer. Next came Stephen, all awkward grins and politician's warmth. "Arya," he nodded. "You look grounded. That's a good thing." And finally, her, Madeline. No makeup today, no heels, no speech. Just a tight expression and a cardigan that looked borrowed from regret. She sat the farthest from me. A few seconds later, our mother arrived, Dr. Lorraine Dawson. Her face had softened with time, but her voice hadn't. "My girls," she said, as if nothing had happened, as if we were all still wearing matching dresses for Easter photos no one liked. She didn't look at me. Not really. Just enough to register presence, not enough to register person. The waitress arrived for drinks. Vanessa ordered white wine, Stephen mimicked. Madeline asked for water. Mom requested chamomile, her usual performance of calm. And then, like a well-rehearsed play, they began the script. "Arya, there's a piece in you lately. Are you meditating, yoga, or just making really smart investments?" Stephen chuckled like she was clever. "I've actually been meaning to ask," he added. "I've got this little project. Thought maybe you'd want to give it a once-over, just as a favor, of course." Madeline didn't speak. Mom finally leaned in, clasping her hands like she was praying. "We've all been through a lot," she said, her voice falling into that tremble she used when she wanted to sound fragile. "Since your father passed, things have been complicated." I counted in my head. 5 sentences. Not one of them had included the word you. Not "we missed you," not "we were wrong," just "we." Like they were one unit, and I'd always been the flaw in the algorithm. Then Vanessa finally stopped circling. "So," she said lightly, "are you okay?" I smiled politely, then leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice soft as glass. "Did any of you ever wonder what happened to Grandfather's Pennsylvania Land Trust?" The air snapped like a rubber band. Stephen blinked. Mom's teacup paused midair. Madeline sat up straighter. "That trust was dissolved," she said tightly, "years ago." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Slim, black, understated. I slid it to the center of the table. The word active was stamped in red in the top corner. "Actually," I said, holding Madeline's gaze, "it wasn't. It was buried, forgotten, and I rebuilt it." Mom's voice was barely above a whisper. "You kept it?" "I did," I nodded, quietly, carefully, without any of you noticing, which, to be honest, wasn't hard. The folder held more than the trust. It held evidence. I opened it slowly, deliberately. First page, the original charter, signed by my grandfather. Second, a forged amendment, dated 2 weeks before his stroke. A different signature, a different witness. Third, records of the vineyard in Oregon, transferred to an offshore shell company listed under Vanessa's firm. Gasps. Small ones, embarrassed ones. Then came the STEM Scholarship, a fund meant for young girls in tech. reallocated into Vanessa's real estate incubation program. Mom's signature, I said, flipping the paper around. But the date's off. She was in Zurich, in surgery. Madeline broke her silence. You don't understand. No, you don't. You never did. And then I did the most unthinkable thing in our family. I paid my own dinner bill. The waitress approached, check in hand. Will this be all together or separate? I didn't glance at the others. This time, I said, slipping my card from my wallet, everyone covers their own. I walked out before the silence shattered. The street outside was colder than I remembered, but the wind didn't cut. It cleared. Monday came with clouds that hung low, heavy, like the sky had been holding its breath for me. I didn't go through the main entrance of Veritas Bank this time. Instead, I walked down a quiet side corridor most people never noticed. A guard I'd never spoken to nodded without a word and pressed a panel. A quiet chime. The private elevator opened. No music, no mirrors, just brass walls and the sound of my own breath. This wasn't for customers. This wasn't even for partners. This was for owners. When the elevator opened, I stepped directly into the bank's legacy floor. Vaults, boardrooms, private archives. The kind of place that carried secrets in the marble and wore names etched into the wall. Names like my grandfather's. And now, for the first time, mine. I paused in front of the boardroom door. My heels didn't click this time. They whispered. Inside, 7 board members waited. Some older, some newer. All of them careful, calculated, the kind of people who spoke in chess moves, not conversation. I didn't wait to be asked. I laid the folder down on the table like it had gravity. This isn't a courtesy update. It's a legal realignment of trust, charter, and oversight, effective last Thursday. I slid the paperwork forward, watching their eyes flick down. The 1954 Pennsylvania Legacy Trust, once chaired by Arthur Lev, has been merged into the primary holdings of Aegis Core 7. Silence. Not surprise, but the kind that comes before acknowledgement. Then Robert Templeton, gray suit, oldest of the group, leaned back and folded his hands. You've had this structured for some time, haven't you? 14 months. Longer if you count the decades they told me I wasn't meant for any of this. He smiled faintly. We've been waiting for someone like you since Arthur passed. I didn't expect that. It hit harder than praise because it was quiet and honest. 15 minutes later, the door burst open. Vanessa. Hair perfect, smile fraying at the edges. She scanned the room like she was looking for something solid to stand on. She didn't find it. I didn't move, just slid a sealed envelope across the table toward her. For you, I said, from legal. She hesitated before opening it. Then her expression changed. Gradually, then all at once. Formal removal, ethics clause, retaliatory misconduct, fiduciary breach, all documented, all signed. Stephen, seated beside her, tugged at his collar like it might make oxygen behave differently. You can't just take everything, he said quietly. We're your family. I looked at him. Exactly. Which is why I didn't take everything, just the part you tried to erase. He looked down. No rebuttal. I turned back to the board. As of today, this institution will operate under a revised family ethics charter. No one here will lose their job, but nepotism ends now. Titles will reflect merit. Past behavior will be audited, and every single community-facing fund will undergo full integrity review. One of the younger board members let out an audible exhale. Relief. Vanessa straightened, her voice like vinegar now. You've always held this resentment, haven't you? I shook my head. No, I've always held receipts. Resentment is optional. She opened her mouth again, but stopped. Maybe it was the weight of the paper in her hands. Maybe it was the look on Robert Templeton's face, one of finality, not negotiation. The board voted unanimously. No debate. When the meeting adjourned, I stayed behind. I walked slowly through the side corridor, past rows of old vaults, until I found one behind glass. A brass plaque read, Arthur Lev, Chair, 1954 to 1997. And right beside it, newly etched, Area Vale, Chair, 2025 dash. I stood there longer than I needed to, because it wasn't just a nameplate, it was a correction. Not revenge, restoration. Legacy isn't always what you leave behind. Sometimes it's what you recover from the rubble. I turned to leave. The elevator doors opened, silent as dusk, and I descended, not as a daughter desperate to be seen, but as a woman who finally stopped asking for a seat and built the damn table instead. The letter was waiting for me when I got home. Not an email, not a message, a letter. Ink, paper, and everything that had been missing for years. It had been slid under my door. No knock, no voice, just the soft weight of something too late to be urgent, but too personal to ignore. I knew the handwriting before I picked it up. My mother's. Clean, sharp, unflinching. The kind of script that looked like it had never made a mistake, even when it had. I held it for longer than I read it. There's something cruel about seeing your name in ink from someone who spent a decade pretending not to say it out loud. Eventually, I opened it. There was no, "Dear Arya," no, "Sweetheart," no softness to land on. Just, Arya. And the unraveling began. There's something I've carried for a long time. Something I should have said before it got this far. She wrote about a summer when I was 10, the lemonade stand. I remembered it faintly. Poster board signs, a borrowed table, sugar packets counted like gold. I hadn't even made a sale before Vanessa accidentally knocked the jug over. I cried, not because I understood sabotage, but because I thought she just didn't like lemonade. But my mother, she saw it all. She wrote, "I knew. I saw what she did. I just didn't know how to protect both of you, so I didn't protect either." She continued, about how everything after grandfather died became a scramble, the estate fracturing, finances spiraling, how George offered stability in exchange for control, and how she agreed to let him and Vanessa guide the next generation of decisions because she thought I was too quiet, too dreamy, too uncertain. She wrote, "I thought I was keeping you safe by keeping you small. I was wrong." My hands went cold, colder than the rain tapping against the window beside me. All of these years, I had believed her silence was strategy. Now I realized it was survival. Not just for her, but for both of us. She didn't excuse herself. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just a single line that felt like it had been buried inside her for decades. Don't become what hurt you. I sat there long after the words stopped. No tears, no outbursts, just the quiet tick of a clock I hadn't wound in weeks. Eventually, I stood and walked to the shelf in my hallway closet. Tucked behind old photo frames and a shoebox of pins and bookmarks was a small, beat-up notebook with a blue plastic cover. My lemonade ledger. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were crooked drawings of coin jars, break-even charts, slogans I thought were catchy at age 10. On the last page, in a handwriting even messier than my current one, was a sticky note. A single line. "One day I'll have a vault, and I won't leave anyone out." I stared at that line until it blurred. That little girl hadn't vanished. She'd just been buried under rejection, edits, and polite dismissals. Maybe I hadn't changed. Maybe I just remembered who I was before they tried to convince me I wasn't enough. A few days later, I was back in front of the family house. Not for a visit, not even for closure. This time, I was returning with documentation, not questions. The old iron gate creaked like it remembered me. The foyer smelled the same, linen and lemon polish and generational pride. Vanessa's voice floated from the dining room, loud, performative, dripping with curated warmth, probably hosting another investment pitch under the guise of brunch. I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked in. Forks froze mid-air. A cousin from Vermont coughed. A friend of a friend looked like she had just walked into the wrong room. At the end of the table, my mother, pearl necklace too tight, met my eyes. She didn't look away. I placed a thick black folder on the edge of the buffet table. "If I may," I said calmly, "I'd like to make a small withdrawal." Vanessa laughed, that brittle kind of laugh that people use when they're searching for the floor. "Aria, if this is another dramatic cry for—" "No," I interrupted, "this isn't drama. It's documentation." I opened the folder. The original trust, the forged amendment, the Oregon vineyard theft, the STEM fund embezzlement, each page clipped, time-stamped, sourced. The room shifted. Eyes darted. My mother didn't blink. And then came the final document. Handwritten, dated 6 weeks ago, addressed to the family's estate lawyer. A retraction. My mother's own statement. "I revoke my prior consent regarding the redirection of family assets. I was not of sound intention. This correction is submitted freely and fully." The room went silent. For once, not in dismissal, but in reckoning. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I simply looked across the table at the people who once told me I was a background character in a story they controlled. And I said, "This house has 2 doors. Today, I walk out the one you didn't build." I left the folder on the table like a will no one saw coming. Outside, the wind was sharper, but I didn't pull my coat tighter. I let it carry me. 1 week later, I found myself sitting on a worn wooden bench beneath a sprawling oak in the quiet part of Lincoln Park. It was early. Too early for joggers, too early for tourists. The kind of stillness that feels sacred. The kind where even the breeze moves like it's trying not to wake something ancient. In my lap was a small, faded savings book. The kind banks don't use anymore. The kind my grandfather once gave me when I was 8 after I'd opened a fake account using monopoly money and ambition. Most of the pages were blank now. The few real deposits he'd scribbled in decades ago had long since been moved, liquidated, reinvested in things I never knew about until recently. But tucked into the back pocket of the ledger, nearly hidden under the fabric lining, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A folded note. Paper yellowing, handwriting steady, thick with purpose. "For the youngest, because she has the biggest heart. Use it when they forget who you are." I didn't cry. Instead, I closed the book gently and slid it into my bag. It didn't feel like history. It felt like direction. The building across from the park wasn't grand. No marble, no revolving doors, just brushed steel and clean glass, and a modest sign. The Vail Initiative, empowering first-gen founders in tech and education. It was the first day I'd walk in not as a donor, not as a silent funder, but as its founder. Mine. Built from scraps of being overlooked. From uninvited dinners and closed doors and folded pages left unsigned until I picked up the pen myself. It didn't carry my family's name. It carried my own. They called after the estate fallout, of course. 4 missed calls from my mother, a voicemail from Stephen trying to sound concerned. Even Vanessa texted, "Can we please talk? Just us? No boardrooms?" I didn't respond. Because I already had. With silence, with structure, with strategy. That was the final withdrawal. Not the money, not the estate, not the land, but my name, my loyalty, my love. Pulled back from the places that wasted it and invested somewhere it could finally grow. As I stepped through the glass doors of my nonprofit, a young intern greeted me with wide eyes and nervous energy. "Ms. Vail?" she asked. "We weren't sure when you'd get here." "Right on time," I smiled. She led me to my office, a small, sunlit corner room with a view of the park. The desk was empty except for a notebook and a mug with the words, "Let them underestimate you. It makes the return sweeter." I sat, opened the notebook, wrote one line, "Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you rebuild." Outside, a single bird landed on the window ledge. Not startled, not waiting, just there, like it had always been watching. I didn't move. I didn't need to. I just let it be.
What would you have done if you were in Arya's shoes? Would you have walked away quietly? Or built something louder than revenge? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me how this story made you feel. Did it hit a nerve? Did it bring back something personal? If you found even one line that stayed with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's another story coming, and it just might be the one you needed to hear. Thanks for staying until the end. Your time means more than you know.